Pine time.
Hello, party people. It's your boy Dre. This is part 3 of Namco Museum, the PlayStation era. If you haven't heard parts 1 or 2, you can check the description of this podcast to find links to those. But if you're all caught up with us, let's continue to part 3 right now. All right, we're at the last one, Namco Museum Volume 5. That's what it says right on the gate here, Namco Museum 5, with a big 5 on it.
The literal gate, yeah, on the title screen.
Those are like very ornate museums on those title screens. No museum looks like that. That shit's like a castle. Okay. Front desk, where's that bell? Let's ring it and find out the lineup for Namco Museum Volume 5. Games include Metrocross from 1985. Also from 1985, we have Baraduke. From 1987, we have both Dragon Spirit and Pac-Mania. And from 1989, we have The Legend of Valkyrie. And in Japan, The Legend of Valkyrie is known as Valkyrie no Densetsu, and it never came overseas. So there's no official English title for it, but it is listed as The Legend of Valkyrie within Namco Museum Volume 5, as well as like subsequent releases such as like Arcade Archives, but officially, it has never really been like translated to anything.
Yeah, but it's a fitting title for it. That's pretty much what it means from my understanding, right? So I mean,
yeah, that's a very literal translation. God, I'm so deeply happy that this game is on this volume and got released here, but we'll get to that later. Because you know what we have to do first? We got to talk about that CGI intro to Namco Museum Volume 5. I'm going to give you the honors for this last volume, Vin.
I'm flapping my wings for this computer graphic extravaganza.
I thought you were going to say computer graphic masterpiece.
I mean, okay. You can stretch the definition of masterpiece, I guess. I'll let you guys judge. But
okay, let me hit that music.
Pac-Man is in an open dirtscape next to a signpole pointing towards a museum. He seems quite lost when all of a sudden a two-headed dragon pops up from behind him and chases him. Pac-Man trips and falls and looks hopelessly frustrated when all of a sudden Valkyrie flies through the sky and stabs the dragon, who then explodes into a bunch of coins. But their dilemma isn't over yet. The ground vibrates and a giant eyeball appears and begins charging a laser. All is not lost when a dragon arrives on the scene with the Metrocross crew in its claws. The giant eyeball fires its laser at Pac-Man and Valkyrie, but the Metrocross guy runs and saves both of them in the nick of time. And then all of a sudden, their giant green friend takes a hit before the blue dragon shoots the eyeball as it explodes. The dust nearby magically changes into Namco Museum.
That, you know, I'll tell you this. Out of all the stupid intros, we said a lot of stupid shit over these 5 volumes. The dust, the mountain itself just becoming the Namco Museum, that makes the least amount of sense out of like any of these. None of them made any sense, but that one was like, what? How did it just become the museum?
It's magical.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you. For Namco Museum Volume 5, there's no more animated character again, so that doesn't come back. So there's like a mix of Pac-Man holding the now loading sign and like related art screens like Volume 4 for loading. Some games like Pac-Mania also feature a bespoke loading screen before the action gets started. So it's just like, you know, the game itself, the museum has a loading screen, and then the game itself has a loading screen. Most museum sections now load with very short pauses without the need for a loading screen at all. It's just a black screen for a second and then boop. So again, just a testament to how they kept improving this over time is really crazy. They kept iterating on this so fast.
Yeah, it's just a pretty stark improvement over Volume 1 and 2, that's for sure.
So the layout, once again, has been totally changed. So Volume 1 and 2 had a motif, Volume 3 and 4 had a motif, Volume 5 goes off the rails, like in a good way.
It's super off the rails, yeah. It looks more like a mansion than a museum this time around. There's ornate touches like vegetation on the railings, and even like a spiral staircase. Yeah, it sounds like the vegetation's super extra, and this Volume 5 museum plays a lot more into floors. Like there's a Baraduke basement, which sounds weird. Pac-Mania and Metrocross are on the first floor, and Dragon Spirit and the Legend of Valkyrie on the second floor. So like you actually like traverse a lot of ground to get to these games. And then you can also even take an elevator to get to the gallery in like the opera house, right? It's like a glass, like sort. It's like a semi-transparent, like glass sort of looking elevator. It's like, okay,
I guess. Yeah, it's strange, but it's so cool. It's such a cool layout. Everything you just said is such a joy. The game moves a lot faster because you move a lot faster. As presumably Pac-Man, you can still strafe. The movement speed is just jacked. And like, again, I didn't really mind the slow movement speed before, especially in the first two, because again, it's museum. You're not really going to be like running through the museum. That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But I have to say the movement speed boost in Volume 5 is much appreciated.
Yeah, I think I appreciate it for sure. And like again, and much like you, I didn't really mind the first 4 volumes too much, but like I think this does help. And another thing I thought was really interesting is that the walls actually have like art. So this art is like really off the rails too. The top floor has like Mappy chasing Goro the boss cat, but then there's an Andor fucking Genesis from Xevious exploding your body. So it's like,
yeah, there is the Andor fucking Genesis right there. It is strange. Yeah, I noticed the back wall of the main lobby has the Toy Pop Kids on it.
Yeah. So many deep cuts, and like I think that stuff is like really, really cool. Even if it makes it look like Mappy doesn't give a shit about a ship exploding, but I mean, details.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. The one thing that is pretty ghetto though is that of course the original Legend of Valkyrie like art would have been a Japanese logo, so they had to change it for us. So if you go to this door, it's like a door that has like a black rectangle, and then with the white font says The Legend of Valkyrie on it. I'm like, it's kind of ghetto.
It's kind of more, I mean, like, I feel like it's more ghetto than Genji and Heike clans. I mean,
it's super ghetto. Yeah, I think it's really
stupid. So there's something interesting here. To reach the gallery in the opera house, you have to take this glass elevator that we mentioned earlier to the 3rd floor. And you go up there and you're greeted with a message when you walk in. It's like you see a house in the background, and it's like a green, lawn. Before you can do anything, a message pops up and it says, Hiroshi Fuji's World of Chana, the Maze Keeper. In the diorama world, Dr. Fuji presents Chana in 3D. Chana and Oru Oru present game notes. What the fuck? So when I first saw this, I thought they were trying to tell me I was about to do some sort of like adventure mini game within the museum, like in the lawn, but that's not the case at all. So what the hell was that? What does that even mean?
I don't know who the character.
None of those words are in the Bible.
Yeah, I don't really know who any of those characters are. I mean, like, there is in fact a 3D character inside. I guess that might be the titular I guess. Though, like Oru. It's like, what?
I don't understand anything that was said there. They should have look. Maybe that made more sense in Japanese, or there was something else that went along with it, or I don't know. Maybe they could have just cut that message for us. I don't know. I don't know why it said that.
I guess it's a testament to how much they want to lead into like their history, I guess, but we don't understand that history.
Yeah, I didn't understand. If that was a deep cut, that was too deep for me. So the Opera House, by the way, is like the new version of the theater in previous volumes. So I guess since you walk into the mansion to get to it, it makes sense that it would be an opera house. It wouldn't make sense to be a theater.
Yeah.
But when you go in there are 3D models of Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man doing like the balcony scene from Romeo and Juliet.
Dude, it's so crazy. Oh,
they animated the whole thing. Yeah, there's like a spotlight on Pac-Man. He's like, on one knee and there. Miss Pac-Man's up there. Ooh, yeah. The whole bit. It's weird.
It's super extra considering that really ultimately this just lets you see movies, right? And like others, and it's a sound test, but for some reason they added like this whole like scene, and I guess that's cool, but it's just like it's super over the top, right?
It's a lot of fun.
Another point I wanted to bring up was that there's more interactive touches this time around compared to the other 4 volumes. And it almost makes this feel like an adventure game in that, for instance, when you go into like the dragon spirit hallway, there's like a dragon head on the ground. It's like, what's going on here? So you interact with it, and the thing it comes out and devours you. It's like it sucks you in. I'm like, what? And so you actually go inside of the dragon spirit like space, and it's this fancy looking room. It's got these dancing figures. It's got stained glass windows. And I'm like, what are these doing here? So you can like press a button and they'll actually like do like a miniature like play. And I'm like, what the hell is this something to do with Dragon Spirit? That's like so weird.
It's like you're inside of a, what would you call it? A music box, right? With like the turning figures on top, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's very quiet, and like, it's the male and female character from Dragon Spirit before he becomes a blue dragon.
Yeah.
You know what though? I kind of love it. Like I'm a Dragon Spirit sicko. Everyone knows this, and that hit me really deep down. I loved it. I loved looking at it. It's kind of perfect. It gets me, right? I don't expect 99% of people to give a shit, including yourself. But if you feel that game the way I do, it feels kind of special. Even like I said before, it's just PS1 graphics from 1997. It's still so super effective at what it does because the art style, and that's not easy to do. They're trying to convert all these like different types of arcade games into like 3D models and representations, and that's not easy work, man. That's not this isn't just a collection of games they just slapped on a disc like they did later for Dreamcast. They put work into this, and they didn't have to, and I love it. I know I keep saying that, but I really appreciate it.
And like the fact that it does feel like an adventure game, that's actually really, really captivating, right? And you have to set up your assets to even like feel that way, and that's really respectable. Even let's just recreating an art style in general is like really hard, let alone like crafting like a whole spiel. And speaking of like the whole spiel, I mean, we'll get more into Valkyrie later, but its room like teleports you to, there's a portal that teleports you into a forest. You see all the different like characters like the fairies and the old wise man or like whatever, right? But to actually like leave, you actually have to walk up to a bunch of bushes, and then when you interact with it, you look like you're pushing them to a side so that you can pass through. And I'm like, yo, like that's actually like a lot of detail.
Yeah, that's not a cheap animation, It's that's a lot of, that's really cool that they did that. Yeah, all the rooms in this are just cool. Do you remember the Pac-Mania room? It's like a swank like party cabin for some reason.
Yeah, it's so weird. And to actually reach it, you have to eat 3 fruits. So you actually have to do like press the button 3 times to actually like eat the fruit, and then it warps you. I'm like, wait, what? But then you go inside and
it's party time in there, like, like Blinky and Clyde and stuff are like playing cards at the table. Inky is jumping up and down on the couch for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know why that's happening. Sue is like serving drinks. or whatever. It's weird. But then you pick up the power pellet on the ground and they're like, oh shit, bye bitch. And they just like leave.
They leave the
window. They all turn blue and they leave, except Sue or whatever is still serving drinks. But if you interact with her, she'll also turn blue and leave. But it's weird. But yeah, as soon as you pick up that pellet, they're like, oh crap, Pac-Man's home. Why are they just partying in his cabin if they know he's going to come home and munch on them? Like, I don't know why that was a good idea.
They thought he was spending a lot of time getting that leg enhancement.
Even the legs. I don't think he's that jealous of Miss Pac-Man's legs. Maybe he is. I don't know.
They're pretty long.
I think you're transfixed with Miss Pac-Man's legs. Admit it right now on the air.
Yeah, I want some Wispy Pal legs.
That's not what I asked at all. That is literally not what I asked you. So the Metrocross room is pretty incredible, right? So it's a pretty faithful recreation of the game. So it's like you have the checkered floor and you have everything from the game, like interactable objects, like the yellow launch ramp, and you do an actual flip, like the camera actually like spins around.
That's crazy. Yeah, the camera
from first person when you do it.
Yeah,
you can get ran over by the barrels, and again, it's from first person, so it's like you flatten. It's like like that cartoon, like I got flattened, and then you're like flat in like a piece of paper or something.
Yeah,
and you see the Metrocross guys on either side, like running their courses as you're like. There's a lot going on in there.
That's so
like that
cool.
It's so cool. You would never be able to do that at 60 frames a second, I think. So, I guess as much as I want to bitch, yeah, I guess they made the right call. You can make much more detailed rooms. Fine. You got me. But also in there, there's like a song that plays in there that sounds nothing like the Metrocross theme, which is a classic composition by Nobuyuki Onogi, but it doesn't sound anything like that blues tune. Sounds like something like an alternate take of Press Your Luck or something. It's like
what? I don't know, maybe they're just trying to sell the tone of the whole thing, but like the funny thing is that we very quickly looked over at YouTube, and you're not the only one that mentioned Press Your Luck.
Yeah, I mean, look, yeah, I'm a Press Your Luck guy, right? I love the aesthetic of that show and the music, right? And so, yeah, that's what's on my mind. I didn't know it'd be on anyone else's mind, but maybe there's more sickos out there than I thought.
I guess so too.
So I wanna read something, because in the how to play section for Metrocross, it was very bizarre. So this is what it says in the story section. I'm just gonna read it verbatim. Metro is abandoned. Save a lone runner. Suddenly, green tiles appear in the street. The slip zone. Jump. He must dodge obstacles to reach the goal before time runs out. The exhausted runner can neither stop nor retreat. This is a game. He cannot die. But game over is a sentence as terrible as death.
What? What does this mean?
Folks, I got nothing. I don't even know what to say about that. I think that just speaks for itself. Maybe we should just move on. I got absolutely nothing.
Don't game over, I guess.
It's a sentence as terrible as death, don't you know?
It is. You want to talk about other bizarre stuff, though. The Baraduke room is the one that kind of stands out the most to me in Volume 5, because it's super trippy. When you go in there, there's a song in there with echoey vocals saying like, your friend, echoey, but like that's one of the lines from the game, but then it's followed by the in-game like, I'm your friend.
It's like this, whoa. It's so weird. It's like this drum and bass thing, which of course was popular in the second half of the 90s, so it's not too strange that they did that, but it's really telling that they zeroed in on the I'm your friend. The one clip, the iconic part of Baraduke that people remember, the I'm your friend though. It's so shrill. It's so shrill. They try to put it in the background of the song, but it's still shrill.
Yeah, it's just man. So soundscape wise is bizarre, but not only that, you can go down like a separate pipe in this room, and it takes you to some space where there's enemies flying above you. And I have no clue what's going on here. I have no clue if there's anything else that you can do in here, and like I just don't know. I'm just like getting the vibes, I guess, but
it's the vibes room. It's the Baraduke vibes room.
It is the Baraduke vibes room because I don't see any other reason for this room to be here. So it's like kind of like, what's happening, man?
It's strange. I was hoping you would tell me what you do in there because I thought I was too dumb to figure it out, but apparently you didn't either. So I don't know.
It's a mystery to me.
It looks cool. I guess maybe they just wanted you to like experience the warp pipe thing like in 3D. I don't know, but it should lead to something.
That is a thing that you do in Baraduke, but at the same time, it's just like I couldn't figure out something to interact with. I mean, it was just really weird. So that was cool.
Yeah, for sure, strange. I was flipping through the issues of NG magazine in the gallery, as I do with every museum, and I got to the October 1992 issue, and the entire image was basically pixelated out. So I was like, what the hell is going on here? So I looked it up online. This cover of NG Magazine features Godzilla and Mothra. What? Okay, that's weird enough, but this is even weirder. Godzilla and Mothra are there for no discernible reason. It's not like Namco ever made a Godzilla game or anything. So like, why the hell are they here? And I finally got my answer when I zoomed in on the fine print all the way at the bottom of the magazine, which was still readable. And to the best of my Japanese, my mediocre Japanese, it says, Namco is in cooperation with the Toho movie Godzilla vs. Mothra, opening nationwide on December 12th.
Whew. What a load.
So it was a tie-in. Now I don't know if they like help finance the movie. I don't know what in cooperation means. I mean, I don't know. But
yeah, I can't really speculate as to the nature of that cross promotion, but I think it's interesting that, you know, they're covering their bases legally, right? Because that's why they like pseudo censoring it out or whatever, right? But yeah, it's fascinating to me that they would even like cross promote with that in the first place. I mean, I can't imagine like what was the basis for it, but I mean, it's interesting, right?
It sure is. I just had to know. I was like, what the hell is on here? I didn't even really think it necessarily that it would be something licensed. I thought maybe it would be something too sketchy for like a game rated E for everyone or something, or kids to adults, maybe.
Yeah.
As it would be back then. So I thought maybe like, okay, they don't want to show whatever this is, so because they might get a teen rating or something. But
Mommy, this house is splattering too much.
Oh, there's a reason why Splatterhouse never appeared on any of these. Okay, so like, but yeah, it's fascinating, and yeah, I hope my Japanese wasn't too far off base, but I'm pretty sure that's what it said.
That's cool though, man. Yeah, that's an extra context because the game description sure as hell doesn't really tell you what the magazine's about. I think it just says like this is about Final Lap 3, but then it's just a bunch of pixels. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it just says the games that are featured in there. It doesn't. Again, the cover doesn't have anything to do with the contents inside. So yeah.
One little weird point I gotta make really quick is that so each of the 5 volumes does have a little arcade history timeline you can browse, but this like includes more granular details. It has like DX and SDs, like Cyber Commando DX and Cyber Commando SD on like separate lines, and I'm like, are they just trying to be as comprehensive as possible for the last volume? And it's like that was like weird. I'm like, did they have to do that? It's like kind of extra.
I don't even think I know what that means. So does that mean like standard SD standard and deluxe cabinets?
It's gotta be. Yeah, right. So it's like, does that warrant being mentioned separately, like as separate like game entries? Like I guess if the cabinets are different enough, but I'm just like,
also, what the fuck is Cyber Commando?
I had never heard of it before looking at these. So I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, I thought that was an interesting like point, just because like they could have just said Cyber Commando, but they didn't.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why they like differentiated that was where. Did they need to say like? I mean, it doesn't say like Suzuka 8 hours full scale and whatever. Not that I don't know there's any other type of Suzuka 8 hours cabinet outside of full scale, but I mean, like it's a really strange thing to include. But I guess for thoroughness, I don't know, man.
Fine time, fine time, fine time.
Let's talk about the games here more in depth. And I think this is going to be the volume where we touch on all 5 of these games. This is without a doubt, I don't know about you, this is the best lineup of the 5 Namco museums. Easy for my money. Every single game here is an absolute winner. So like, I want to touch on all of them. But before I do, you tell me like what you think.
You know, honestly, upon first glance, these seem like some pretty crazy deep cuts, and I can't imagine like your average like enthusiast is going to know all 5. But like, I think to me, like these 5 are the most consistent quality wise, because in the other 4 volumes, there's some things I wouldn't call them like stinkers or like bad games, but some that we wouldn't necessarily gravitate towards, such as like we're not going to be playing like Drago or like Return of Ishtar necessarily.
Those are the only 2 I would call bad. I wouldn't even say Dragon Buster is bad. I just don't really like to play it. Draga and Ishtar I would actually say are not good, but that's it.
Yeah, so like, but yeah, again, like there are titles that we are less inclined to revisit, such as like the original Rally X and then like Dragon Buster and stuff like that. But I'd say all 5 of these warrant, playing. Like all 5 of them are standouts in their own right, mechanically and aesthetically, and yeah, they're cool.
I absolutely agree. I think all 5 of them are stupendous. I want to touch on them all real quick, if you don't mind. Metrocross is just so much fun. I had never played it before I got this Volume 5. Baraduke and Metrocross were the ones I had never played before. And it's just, you could almost say Metrocross is like the ancient archetype of what we might now call the endless runner.
Oh, that's an interesting way of putting it, yeah.
Is that fair to say? Because
yeah, I'd say so.
It has like great score play and tension against the clock, like almost like a futuristic game show. You could call it. And I like that motif. That's a motif that Grobda has as well. That sort of future like blood sport kind of thing. Yeah, and I love that shit. And it's just an incredible design, man. Also, maybe one of the best Namco main BGMs ever. Again, composed by Nobuyuki Onagi. He's done Mappy. He's done Libble Rabble. He's done many things at Namco, but like, Jesus, man, I honestly think Metrocross like takes the cake.
It's catchy, man. It's an earworm. I think it's really, really good, and that's already amongst a whole lineage of stacked BGM. So,
yeah. You were not really a fan of Pac-Mania before, were you? Or am I misreading that?
For a long time, I wasn't really necessarily a Pac-Mania fan. It was actually, it took a few plays to like kind of like understand it. But like, I think by the time like I started playing Pac-Man Museum Plus and stuff like that, I was really into it. But like, for a long time though, I was just like, this is just a weirdo isometric Pac-Man. But no, it holds its own, man. It holds its own.
It's really deceptively simple design, as Pac-Man usually is, but like, you'd think because Pac-Man can jump in this game, that's kind of the gimmick of it. Pac-Man can jump in a maze game, not like Pac-Land, which is a side-scroller, but a maze Pac-Man game where Pac-Man can jump. You'd think that would trivialize everything, right? Oh, you can just jump over all the ghosts, and you can do that, but the ghosts are so much smarter than they were before. They'll chase your ass down. There's also many more ghosts. So the game does balance out, and then if you get really far, some ghosts are also able to jump. So it balances. Just because you can jump doesn't mean the game is easy street.
And also, like, you don't have full visibility of the maze, unlike earlier games as well, so that you kind of have to think on your feet sometimes, and that's an interesting decision making at play too. So,
what would you call Baraduke? I don't really know what genre it is. I guess it's just a action game. It's not really a shmup. It's what the hell is it? I mean, obviously my comp is Air Fortress, but nobody knows what that is, so I don't really I don't really know how to describe it, you know?
A free flying side scrolling shooter?
But sometimes you go up and down. You do kind of go around a map sometimes as you go along.
You have the ability to fly
always,
up and down, yeah. So it's like,
it's not really sides. I don't know, man.
I don't know, man. Yeah, but
it's kind of a dungeon-y kind of shooter game. It's fantastic. Whatever it is, it's artistically fantastic. It plays great too.
Yeah, I love it. It also deserves that crazy room.
The I'm your friend room.
Yeah, the vibes room.
The Baraduke vibes room. I was looking up the soundtrack to Baraduke. It's in Japanese, but the I'm your friend soundbite says I'm your friend in English. That's the only part that's in it. All the rest of the soundtrack is in Japanese listing.
Oh, really? They kept it. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, but I'm your friend is in because it's in English in the game too, so you may as well just write it that way.
Yeah, indeed.
Of course, I've already spoken about it, but Dragon Spirit, maybe my favorite shmup ever. We probably don't have the time to go into why I like that game so much, but just I'll say this just as like a visual thing. I think it's so cool, especially it came out in 1987, right? So you had things like R-Type and Gradius was cooking, right? Or Salamander, Life Force, if you will. And plenty of these other like hard sci-fi themes. Dragon Spirit was completely different because it's like the first fantasy shmup I can think of with like mountains and grassy plains and volcanoes and like shit like that, like fantasy settings. A snowy field, right? You didn't see that in other shmups. And you're a dragon, of course. You play as a dragon, so already you're like, it's just so different, and it feels so different. And Shinji Hosoe composed the soundtrack to this, and the sequel, Dragon Saber. Some of my favorite music of all time.
It's so memorable, yeah. And even the opening scene, like you're flying over this ocean-looking place too, and that's already pretty distinct as well. And like, yeah, like just everything ties together so cohesively. You power up and get like 2 heads or like whatever stuff like that. Really feels empowering. And the game is hard too. It'll kick your ass.
It's not easy. You've played the NES version, right? Dragon Spirit, the New Legend.
Yep.
Which is a lot easier. Honestly, I almost recommend people play that just because you can actually beat it. But it's a great conversion for a lot of different reasons. But the arcade version should be experienced too. Any version of Dragon Spirit is a good version. Never played a bad
Absolutely.
one.
Yeah.
So there's one game we didn't mention yet. And that is Legend of Valkyrie. For those who don't know, it's a top-down action game, and it has an RPG feel, even though it's not an RPG. Obviously, it's an arcade game.
Yeah.
But it's very unique in the arcade space. Could we start there?
I would definitely say it's unique because, yeah, it almost feels like an action RPG of sorts. I mean, fundamentally, it's about, like stabbing with your sword or whatever, right? But you can do all sorts of things aside from that as well. You actually pick up gold, which once you purchase power-ups and stuff like that, right? And then, so like that in itself already like suggests some degree of like inventory shenanigans, which kind of isn't really the most consistent like mechanic in like arcade games, right? And
well, you don't really, I mean, like I'm trying to think of stuff like Kadash or whatever, where you'd have to like hold the fire button if you were the mage to get, and a thought bubble appears over his head, like fireball or potion or this, you know what I mean? And then you have to let go at the right time. So that was kind of awkward, but it works. But yeah, sometimes for that kind of like thing where you're trying to use spells or whatever, doesn't always come off the best in an arcade game because you don't have the buttons.
But I think this game controls really well with attack and jump. Like it's simple, right? That's at the heart of any arcade game that's actually worth its salt, worth its weight in salt. And like and just because like you do have to hold the button to like use your spells, I never really particularly minded. And those are spells that you can actually acquire like during your run. So there's a feeling of progression, right? And that is really, really fascinating to me.
I don't call games special very often, but maybe I should. I think Valkyrie is special. I'm super grateful it's on here. And I love the feeling that it's not an RPG, but it feels like one.
Yeah. I just think it has the hallmarks of like a really solidly crafted like arcade game. Like everything is extremely like vibrant and readable. The game really leans into this sort of aesthetic. Like even from the very beginning, you're jumping down from high up above down below to the earth, and that is arguably the most iconic opening in an arcade game to me. Like I like it's like I can't even think of like too much else like that kind of does that. So I mean like it sets the tone right away, right? And
I'm sitting here trying to like answer your question. What is more iconic or memorable than that? I mean, I'm sure there is stuff, but like that's up there. That's definitely up there. I first played Legend of Valkyrie actually on MAME, I would say in the very early 2000s. Back in my message board days, we used to do this like monthly score attack thing for an arcade game on MAME. We wouldn't try to pick anything too popular like Pac-Man. We didn't want anyone to like, ace everybody else who happens to be good at it. So we picked stuff like, but we didn't want to get too obscure. So we did stuff like Donkey Kong Jr. or like whatever. It's stuff that's not like, of course, everyone knows what Donkey Kong Jr. is, but nobody's going to like, come in here and fucking, destroy us on score. But one month we did use Legend of Valkyrie. I had never heard of it before, and I played it and I was floored. Like, how you hear like 3 seconds of a song and you go, whoa, because it's going to be like the absolute shit. Again, like you were talking with that intro, as soon as the game starts, you're like, holy shit, this is incredible. Like everything was perfect. My opinion. So how did you first play Valkyrie? It definitely wasn't from Namco Museum Volume 5, right?
Yeah, so I kind of remember, struggle to remember the specifics, but I mean, I think I tried an arcade ROM. I would probably say in the early 2000s or something like that, but I mean, like, yeah, I primarily played it via Volume 5, like, later in life, as well as, like, the later Arcade Archives release. Yeah, I mean, I had heard of those score play message board competitions, but I had never participated in one, so that was kind of how I got my licks in. I think I just saw the title one day and probably was just curious about it, so it was just by pure happenstance that I even like played it originally.
Interesting. So you just decided to pick it up. No one said, oh man, this game is the shit or something. So you just kind of played it on your own accord randomly. Here's a Namco game I never heard of or some shit.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like what? Legend of what? Valkyrie? That's kind of a weird, interesting title, right? I think it was just based off of that.
Yeah. So I love when a game tells a story with visuals. Especially arcade games. And what I mean by story is not literally the plot of the game, although I guess it could be that too. That's fine. But what I mean is visuals that move the player mentally to like the next place and space in the world that probably doesn't make any sense. So it's like the best way I could describe it. That feeling of movement and like not progress, because progress seems like a stat thing or like leveling up. I don't mean it like that. I mean progress in the game world. You're moving towards something. And that's kind of really hard to do in any 2D top-down game, but I think Valkyrie manages.
It really, really does manage it because of the setup really takes you from locale to locale, right? So it really gives the impression of a sweeping epic journey, even though like on a sheer technicality, this is an 8-stage game, but like you really feel like you're going towards a destination during those 8 stages just because of how unique like each world is, and like, and to a degree, like it really all falls in the same motif, so it feels coherent at the same time, or feels cohesive at the same time too. And that's like pretty hard to do.
You are absolutely correct. And I just love the part where I'm thinking of the part early on where you start going up a mountain path on the right side of the screen, and on the left side of the screen, you see like a miniaturized version of the area that you just started in. And it keeps scaling further and further out as you keep going up this mountain path. So it gives a sense of scale. And then all of a sudden you're at the top, and then you're like jumping on platforms. You're doing platforming in the sky.
Yeah.
Way up in the sky now. And I don't use this word very often, but it's majestic. Video games are fucking magic, basically, is what I'm saying.
And when you have the direction like this, it really sells that magic, right? And I think that's really, really cool. There's a whimsicality to this game that feels very widely, like, universally appealing, and, like, it almost seems kind of reminiscent of the way, like, Dragon Quest monster designs are very universally appealing in that regard. And, like, so far as, like, Volume 5 is concerned, it has a straight-up pictorial script that, like, goes for multiple pages telling about how the game's like backstory was set up, and it's essentially a storyboard, so they really thought about this stuff.
Yeah, they really did, because having those kind of storyboards doesn't mean you're going to have like tons of text or something in the game. It just means that like when you do that, you have a game flow. Storyboarding is important for just about any medium, but like, you know, especially if you're making something that's supposed to be digested real fast, like an arcade game or a music video, right? Like you need to get the point across to whoever's watching it immediately. And Valkyrie manages to do that really well.
It's very well planned, and it conveys a sort of setting like immediately, and you know there's a lot of thought put into it. And furthermore, like if you look at the gallery, there's a whole sequence of like 22 concept art images that tell you like the game's backstory, right? And I think it says like origin of Valkyrie or whatever. And this stuff is like really, really crazy. And there's a painterly look to these images. It almost seems like as magical as like a Studio Ghibli like animation or something. And that's like crazy, man.
It's wild. It's so cool. I think the lasting impression for me about Legend of Valkyrie is I think it's just like a grand testament to like art direction and ingenuity being forever. You know, almost like we talked about, like these museums hold up as like fun celebrations of Namco history. You know, despite its PS1 graphics or whatever, the art holds up. Valkyrie leverages that same scaling and rotation used in Assault, as we talked about earlier. And like, because like you said, you start the game, you come down to Earth, like zoom, you know, you zoom right in. And it uses it to really great effect here, I think. And that's the lasting impression to me of Valkyrie. It's just, you know, one of those games that just feels like everything it should be.
It has that feel down, and yeah, there's some sequences where you can like totally like jump up into the sky and it'll really like have that scaling, which that's just really something magical in like the video game space. And I really like thoroughly enjoyed like the setting, and it has like these elemental fairies and restoration, talk of restoration and stuff like that, and it just feels like a really, really solid journey all around, right? Yeah, in a manner of speaking, it almost feels like a precursor to like the Mana series in terms of just that sort of motif.
Kind of. Where like the art direction carries. Now, of course, Mana games or some of them anyway, do have good gameplay as well. But like, and so does Valkyrie. But like, you know, it really does carry it, and you really feel that. Yeah, that's a good. I didn't really think of Mana. That's actually a kind of a perfect comparison. Mm-hmm. Do you, before we shut up about Legend of Valkyrie, do you think we could possibly speculate why this never came out here in arcades? I mean, like we said, Namco Museum Volume 5 is the first release of this game here ever. What happened? I can't believe they sat on something so special.
You know, like in the late 80s, early 90s, I think there was a sort of sentiment where like some companies might have been scared about like an anime-esque sort of like aesthetic doing well over here. And I mean, this game's got that in spades, right? So that may have been part of it, but at the same time, like, I feel it could have succeeded if they gave it a chance, but they would have needed to take that step first, right?
I just can't imagine. Like, even if Namco didn't want to do it themselves, I think they were self-publishing at this point, and like, I don't know, why would Midway and Atari and everyone pass on this, or Capcom or whoever publish stuff here for other people? Like, it just seems that no one would bite on this game. That's so weird. I don't think like a 2-player cooperative top-down RPG-ish game, I would have ate that up. But I guess. I mean, maybe not everyone would have ate that up, but I think that's a hit game here. If Kadash was big here, I don't see why this couldn't have been.
Yeah, it's such an accessible game too. I don't think this game is particularly prickly, and so yeah, I don't really understand. I mean, like it does have a decent amount of dialogue and like some translation to do, but that doesn't really stop other companies, right? I mean, like, so I don't know. It's just weird.
I definitely don't think it's a case where they didn't want to translate any text. That seems silly. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
again, Kadash had hella text, or like other games of its time. Like, we're bringing over plenty of games that have this level of text or more into an arcade. I think it's fine. Whatever.
Just got to give it a chance, but yeah, I don't know, man. Marketing at the time was finicky and weird, so that may have been part of it.
That is true. That is true. We'll never know, I guess, but I'm glad it came here eventually, and I'm glad I got to play it.
Absolutely, me too.
Well, before we wrap up, just real quick question. All 5 volumes feature at least one Pac-Man game, which is not something I really thought of when these originally came out. But yeah, all of them have a Pac-Man. That has to be by design, right? So they always say, "Hey, there's Pac-Man."
Yeah, I mean, Pac-Man's easily far away the most recognizable Namco character, right? So I mean, like, I guess they're just leaning into it, and maybe to some degree they felt they had some material to like make some zany rooms. I mean, maybe that's part of it too, but like maybe it's a combination of recognition and like just having the flexibility to build some weird shit. I mean, maybe, I don't know, but
I guess, yeah. It's just weird that they had the wherewithal to be like, hey, Pac-Man should always be in our shit. Well, because like if you look at all the covers of the NG magazine, they literally all have Pac-Man on them to varying degrees.
Yeah, like, it's like the Famitsu mascot, right? Yeah, or whatever.
Yeah, he's never not there, right?
Yeah.
Does the Famitsu mascot have a name, by the way? I never...
Oh, they do, but I don't remember their name, yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I again, that's just something I didn't notice until I was playing all these back to back for this project, and I was like, oh shit, you have it all.
Well, they didn't represent Pac and Pal though. Pac and Pal's missing. What the fuck's up with that?
Pac and Pal can stay missing for all I fucking care. I mean, look, it's not a terrible game, but like honestly, I'm not like clamming for it. Oh man, Pac and Pal got robbed. I don't think you'll ever hear me say that. So.
Hashtag Pac and Pal got robbed.
Hashtag Pac and not your pal or something.
They're not. They're douche. They're a douche.
Okay. Before we get too pissed at Pac and Pal, let's take a quick break and then we'll wrap up.
Fine time.
All right, we're back, and we're refreshed. We're back from our Namco Museum Tour. How do you feel? Pretty exhausted. That's a lot of museums.
It's a lot of museum. I think my wings carried me through some of it, though, so it's not too bad. But
I love your new fairy lore, honestly. It's pretty good. Okay, so we wanted to wrap up and just talk about these volumes in general and maybe rank them at the end, or in fact, probably rank them at the end. So I guess we just have a series of talking points here. And my first one is, should people go back and play these PS1 iterations of Namco Museum? Should people in the year of our Lord 2024 go back and do this shit?
Man, that's a tough question because, I mean, for one, they're not exactly the most accessible, so I wouldn't say these are worth it for most people, because you gotta go through some lengths to like access them, and it's probably not really the best use of one's time in the grand scheme of things. You gotta be like a hardcore Namco enthusiast to get your mileage out of these. But honestly, if you really want to experience some of the history and like the worlds of these games, these are extremely fascinating time capsules. The concept art and the promo materials are unique, even among Namco Museum titles, and I would say even compilations overall. So I mean, like, I learned a lot just replaying these, and I haven't really seen a lot of this content elsewhere. So there's that.
You know, that's a really good point, because, okay, let me start here, though. No, I don't really think people should go back and play these iterations of Namco Museum. Arcade archives exist nowadays. Emulation exists that is much better to play on modern hardware. I just feel like the promotional material is like too low resolution to say it's worth it for just that. However, it's like you said, there's a lot of stuff here I never seen before and would have never known existed if not for these iterations of Namco Museum.
Yep.
So, yeah, they're low res. I'm just going to combat myself right now. Yeah, they're low res, but they're worth seeing because they're so unique. Again, if you just search for stuff online, I didn't even know what a pop card was or whatever. I learned that from this. Mm-hmm. So, you know, when you think of more modern approaches to this stuff, though, like, again, like the developmental drawings and sketches and like Street Fighter 30th anniversary and stuff like that, it's hard to recommend playing Namco Museum to the common person. But if you're a sicko, if you're a crazy person like us, absolutely go seek these out. You will have a lot of fun. But if you're not, if you're just like casual, like I play an arcade game or something on my current console sometimes, don't bother. Just play Arcade Archives or something like that.
But the one thing Arcade Archives can't get you is those Baraduke vibes.
Baraduke vibes are very important, but yeah, you can play Baraduke, but you won't get the Baraduke vibes room. And quite frankly, and I don't know what you think about this, I feel like we're lucky to have ever gotten all 5 volumes on PlayStation here, because this era, this PS1 Saturn era, saw a lot of different companies making classic game compilations, probably most notably Capcom Generations. Do you remember that shit?
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
So I think we got volume 5 here because it had like Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and like, is that the one that has Street Fighter 2 Alpha Gold or something? Or
I believe so. Yeah, I think they also rebranded it. I don't even think it was called Capcom Generations when they gave it to us. I think
no. It wasn't called that. I just knew it was called that from magazines. Hey, we're getting the 5th Capcom Generations here as so-and-so. That's the only reason why I know that. I think it was called Street Fighter Collection or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
But like in Japan, they also had a 5-volume thing. I think they came out in Europe as well, where here was like Ghosts and Goblins, Ghouls and Ghosts, and Super Ghouls and Ghosts, even though it's not an arcade game, right? Here's a couple of shmups like Vulgus and whatever. They had collections. They were a lot smaller and they were cheaper and didn't have much production to them as a Namco Museum, because what does? But that existed, and we didn't get those. Did SCEA, did Sony Computer Entertainment America cockblock them because they were 2D games? Right? Because that was a thing.
They were so anal about 2D stuff, man. Didn't they also like get finicky about like Mega Man X4? I think at first, I think that I vaguely remember. Oh, Mega Man 8, I think they were fussy about or something. Maybe
Mega Man 8, they got fussy about. The rumor has it back in the day that Capcom threatened to withhold Resident Evil 2 unless they stop being assholes. That was the rumor.
That's such a great. I can see it though. I can see it.
I mean, who knows if that's true? But that was the rumor. But Namco Museum actually has production and 3D elements to it and everything and a whole thing, so they left Namco alone about it.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe that's why we didn't get Namco Museum Encore, because there's no museum.
It's essentially an overglorified game list, yeah. So maybe that's part of it.
Maybe Nintendo didn't give a fuck, or I mean, it's on N64. Well, back then they were taking any Namco game they could get, right? But like, yeah, you know, it's just, I don't know, that thought kind of occurred to me, huh? Just maybe it's a 2D thing. We didn't get the Capcom Generations, although I would have eaten the hell out of a Makaimura collection here, but you know, hey,
show Sony. It's so weird.
I kind of have another like shower thought I want to throw at you, and you can interrupt me as much as you want and talk about however you feel about this.
Right.
But as I think back on it, Namco Museum Volume 1 really taught me a lot about arcade game design and gave me like this much deeper appreciation for it. If I ever had appreciation at all, because like, as anyone knows who listens to the show, I was an arcade head growing up. That was my favorite thing more than any console, more than anything. I loved going to the arcade to play games. That was my bread and butter. I was also a Nintendo kid, and I played plenty of games at home, but, you know, the arcade was my happy place. It was the best graphics, the best sound, the best flash and sizzle, and all that shit you couldn't get at home. But I think when I was a kid, that was all it was to me. Flash and sizzle.
Yeah.
You know?
Which is fair as
like,
you're a kid, that's what you're going to get, yeah. But
exactly. I loved Strider on an audiovisual level, and I still do, obviously. I think it's one of the best games of all time in that regard, but I didn't appreciate it for its gameplay. I just loved the way it looked and sounded.
Right.
And I think it's hard to understand the design philosophies of something like Pac-Man when you just put a quarter in, play, and then lose, and then move on to the next machine. Okay, that was fun. Next. But when you have it at home and you get to learn how each ghost moves, learn how long it takes for a fruit to appear, and like all that like nitty gritty shit, it takes on a whole new life of its own. I guess I'll just stop there. Like, is that fair? Do you understand what I'm saying? Is this just
it sort of teaches in a manner of speaking, it literally teaches the mechanics via the how to play section, and also has the tips to help you bolster your game. And I mean, like, arcade cabinets have like a how to play, of course, but like just the way this is set up, like I think it really sort of cultivates this care and love for the game, just the way it plays, right? So it's just and just the fact that it's like, well, I mean, you're paying for a compilation, so you're going to get that curated list, and you better and can't just like blow them off, right?
Yeah, I mean, like you're going to learn today, boy. You're going to learn how to play pole position. Dude, back then, I just played it over and over and over again till I got good at pole position. Yeah. I did. That's how, I mean, you just crash over and over and over until it's like, oh man, I can really play this.
It ain't easy. It ain't easy. And that's
not at all. And that's what you had to do back then. And that's what I did on Namco Museum Volume 1. It's like, well, there's only 7 games on here. May as well try to make the most of them and try to get good at this shit.
Mm-hmm.
And what I said earlier about like the real deal at home. Yeah. Arcade ports of Pac-Man and Galaga existed on like NES and shit, but like, come on, those weren't the real thing. And we all knew it. You know, they were pretty good approximations, but that's all they were, approximations.
Well, they looked the part, right? Because I think Pac-Man NES, like, on a sheer superficial level, yeah, sure, it looks like Pac-Man. I don't think it really plays like it, though, because I think the ghosts don't really chase you as much or something, right? So it's like, yeah, it doesn't play the same.
But yeah, this was like Namco Museum was the first real deal, first time ever at home, the real arcade game. And when you learn the real game, like you said, ghosts have different behavior and shit in like other ports, you learn why it works.
Yeah.
I was like 14 when Volume 1 came out, and that's about the age when you start to become like more discerning about the art you enjoy, I guess, and why you enjoy it. And Namco Museum Volume 1 provided that for me in just reevaluating basically some of the best games of all time.
Yeah, it's a great format for it too. And it's just so fascinating that, like, you know, the PS1 was some generations removed from like the original releases, but like it wasn't like that removed, as we've said, right? So I mean, like, it's good timing, right?
Yeah.
Something that's extremely curious to me is that, you know, successive compilations after these PlayStation volumes, successive compilations don't really encapsulate the museum experience, right? And so, like, the question I have is that, do you suppose they're just too afraid of, like, needing to, like, build out, like, current visuals during, like, the PlayStation 2 or the GameCube era or something?
That's a really interesting question. I don't think it's a matter of having to step up the graphics necessarily, especially not in the early PS2 era where we were having games like look at any of those like early From Software games like Eternal Ring or like Armored Core 2, which are basically like warmed over PS1 graphics at 60 frames a second. I mean,
That's
they are.
great.
Like,
They
come
are.
on.
It's true. It's true.
Like they ran so well and they looked cool for what they were, but man, that early PS2 shit, man, it's something.
It is.
Namco's own Ridge Racer 5 had that like clean, high frame rate, like not aliased kind of look to it.
Yeah, it's clean. Yeah.
And I think that would have been fine for a Namco museum.
Mm-hmm.
At least it would have been for me, but there might be other factors at play too. But you say what you think. Why do you think we sort of abandoned the museum?
To a certain degree, like, I mean, they built out a lot of like unique assets for each of the games in here. So I wonder if it's just a matter of like just simply not wanting to like rebuild all of it. Because I mean, like, this is a very distinct PS1 look to it. So
Yeah.
And it works, but at the same time, I kind of wonder like, well, maybe they just didn't want to port that literally right over. Right. That might not necessarily have carried the same impression, even if like it wouldn't necessarily have been ghetto to us, but maybe to like the common person be like, well, I bought a PS2 disc to look at these things. So it's like I wonder if they were scared to like some degree, but also just from a development perspective, maybe they just didn't feel like rebuilding everything.
Yeah, I guess so. You know, and also, well, there's a couple of factors at play too, I think. One, they may have started to run out of games. Like now, they could have done a PS2. There was a PS2 in Cube at Namco Museum in like what 2002 or 3 or something like that.
Yeah,
but like they just sort of like mashed together games that were in the previous like PlayStation era. So basically, they would have been retreading like the same motifs. Like, okay, here's a Pac-Man room. Well, we already did that. So like now, what do we do? Or here's now what do we do for a Galaga room? Now, again, personally, I wouldn't have minded if they did the same shit, only with upgraded graphics. Honestly, I wouldn't have. That would have been perfectly okay with me. I think other people would have been like, well, we already saw this stupid Miss Pac-Man with legs and like Pac-Man on the toilet or whatever. But so like, who cares? I don't know. For me, that would have been cool. I've always like seeing stuff from the like stepped up a generation, especially at that time when technology moved faster and the difference between generations were more.
Yeah,
I would have been cool with that. But again, maybe they didn't want to be like, okay, we have to make a toy pop room again or something. Now what do we do? Maybe that was the case.
I just wonder if they would have felt compelled to like actually build out like a tricked out set, like, oh, this time we better make a bunch of presents and toys on the side. It's like, but you don't have to, but maybe they're just like afraid of the expectations out there. I mean, I don't know, but
that is true, I guess. I don't know. I don't think it would have been a problem. They could have done any number of things with these rooms to like, yeah, we already played these games, so give us something new to look at in the museum, but there was no museum. Also, I guess you could say by the time we got to Namco Museum 50th anniversary, I think that was in 2005.
Yeah.
There started to be too many games. Like by the time we got there was like 15 games on there. It's a big fucking ask to be like, he'd make 15 game rooms and this giant museum and stuff. Like that's a big undertaking.
It is.
So maybe that was part of it too. By adding more games, they had to ditch the museum.
Yeah, I guess it's a matter of, I wouldn't necessarily say like quantity over quality. That might be slightly dismissive, but yeah, it's just maybe the trend was towards just like cramming it full of games to like, I don't know, because they probably didn't really want to also be like, well, here's multiple volumes of a PS2 disc or a Cube disc. That will be kind of maybe a little weird. So I mean, maybe they just want to like maximize the value, maybe.
Yeah, tastes were changing too. It's like I said earlier, that first Namco Museum almost felt like, again, the platonic idea of like CD-ROM multimedia type of shit. But we were already way past that in the early 2000s.
We
right?
were. Yeah, that's true.
So maybe it's just that kind of idea doesn't really work anymore, of an interactive disc where you can do this and that and play games. It's not really maybe what people wanted.
Could be.
Yeah. Also, I guess, I don't know if you've ever played any of those like PS2 compilations, like Activision Anthology or like Intellivision Lives or whatever. And like, no, those aren't museums either, but Activision Anthology is fucking incredible with the way they present the material to you. They even have stuff on there like commercials, like old commercials from the late 70s, early 80s. It's so cool. It may be the coolest thing Activision's ever done, honestly.
I've dabbled in the Activision Anthology on PS2, and yeah, I remember it was pretty jam-packed with content in other respects. I think it had a lot of games on it, if I'm not mistaken, too.
It had a lot of games, and the presentation was so cool that, honestly, I didn't miss the museum. But because it had its own way of presenting things, and I think that's what people gravitated to with Atari 50, right? So,
oh yeah.
And maybe that leads into my next question about, like, can a Namco museum work today? Like, think about it in today's technology, however they want to build it out. Unreal Engine 5, you can do the max too, because there's nothing else going on. You're just in one environment. They can make it 120 frames a second. They can use Lumen and Nanite and stuff it to the brim and make it look crazy.
Yo, that sounds great. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, could you? I mean, it's kind of putting you on the spot. What could you think about in a modern Namco museum?
I mean, a modern Namco museum could really just be a ginormous sort of interconnected space. Like, I mean, you could have themed sections of the museum. You know, if you go to like any like sort of art museum, they have like themed sections based on like different eras of art history or like whatever, right? So I mean, like, you could lean into that, just like really make it expansive, because like these PS1 museums are cool, but they're relatively constrained. So, I mean, you could jump off the rails and really kind of build out a physical space to the max, right? That Lumen talk, though, oh my God, that
got you hot. That got you hot in the pants.
Yeah. Get some lit spaces. So you can actually see them. Wait, what?
I just think it would be so cool. It's like you said, you could make like true like art installations, almost like what we said with the gapless room? Yeah. Or is it the Galaxian room? One of those where it's like, you know, you have that tractor beam right in your fucking face right when you get in there.
Yeah.
So it's like,
that,
so right in your face. So it's like, maybe imagine that done like now, what, 4 or 5 generations later, done to the max. Like crazy, right?
That would be incredible. The particles too, like that would be incredible.
Oh my God. Oh my fucking God. Imagine like a Tekken 2 room where they have like the old characters or something kind of in the background doing God knows what. They could just stuff it with all the characters because they're made out of like 50 triangles anyway. Who cares? You just put them all there. And then like, I don't know, there's like different ways to flex, right? Like they could do that.
I was thinking holograms actually. So you have the semi-translucency.
Oh like man, that. Just there's so much cool stuff. Well, it's funny, you know, like thinking about Tekken 2, obviously that was like a new game as like these Namco museums are coming out. Is there anything that could be like, obviously like Mr. Driller would be in there, right? If we did like a modern Namco museum. Mm-hmm. What could also, like, I'm trying to think of like current, we obviously couldn't do any of the light gun stuff, right? So like,
oh man, see that would be cool though if you have like a Time Crisis room or a Point Blank room, but yeah, I can't really do that. But
can't really do it. What? There's got to be something, right? There's got to be.
You can do like I guess fighting games are like the easy example, but I mean like a Soul like room, put like a Soul Edge / Calibur room. I mean that would be pretty cool too. But I guess that's kind of the basic answer. But
no, sure, no, that's that. I'm just trying to think if there's anything from the 2000s that would actually. I guess you could do like a. It doesn't even have to be arcade games. I mean, obviously, as you get into the 2000s, we would have to abandon that idea because arcades are not the shit anymore. But
right,
I don't know. It would be super cool to see something like that.
My bet's on a Wangan Midnight room with a cars around you on a virtual track.
I don't know why I thought you were going to say with Yuzo there. With Yuzo,
I mean, throw him in there. Yeah, throw the music in there. Why not? It'd be great.
He's just on the turntable, like playing some hot, like
like a
maximum
literal
tune jams.
Yuzo. Oh my god.
Yeah. Like he's just there.
Oh, that's too cool for school.
Just going back to, again, about the museum concept and presentation at the time being so important, just as far as like bringing in casuals and like packaging games that way was such an incredible sell to the public, like just the package of it, because it wasn't just like, hey, this disc has Miss Pac-Man on it. Because casuals, don't want to spend $50 in 1997 on a PlayStation just to play fucking Pac-Man. You can do that. I mean, they've done that, right?
Yeah.
So they're clearly buying the Namco Museum, and that shit mattered. And I keep thinking back to the sales and how like Volume 1 and Volume 3 just popped off. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that I wish more developers and publishers, for that matter, would understand that bringing stuff to the public like that is something you can always do. It doesn't always have to be like, I don't know, Ratalaika out here, just like publishing like random Turbo CD games. And by the way, God bless them. I'm glad that they do that. Or like Hamster out here with Arcade Archives. Like, retro content doesn't just have to be that. It can be this too. And I wish it could be that again. Maybe not a Namco Museum, but just stuff like that. In other words, I hope Atari 50 ignites like some sort of revolution that makes everyone realize, hey, there's better ways we can do this.
Yeah, and Atari 50 is the big standout example, right? Because, I mean, Digital Eclipse has been doing wonders for a while. I mean, Street Fighter 30th and SNK 40th are so jam-packed. But at the same time, it's just like, I feel like Atari 50 takes that one step further with the virtual timelines. It's a literal playable, like, space. Like, the timelines let you just jump in, and there's chock full of interviews and, like, all sorts of historical information. And, yeah, I really hope that does sort of like spearhead a sort of revolution where, we don't just have to cram ROMs into a disc or whatever, right? And I've heard really, really fantastic things about like their Gold Master series, like the making of Karateka is also similar along those lines as well. Yeah, it just seems like I think we're reaching a point where we have reached a point where we don't just want to like literally play this stuff. We want to like know more about the background, and that's fantastic, man.
Yeah, it's the push and pull, right? Because you get people into the games via that content. Like, I was so interested in seeing all that. Like, when I first got Volume 1 back in the day, all that Bosconian content in there, going into the gallery and being able to play all the stupid voice clips and figuring out what they sounded like and like whatever, like you don't get all that stuff. And again, with all the promotional material and all that stuff, you really dive into, you know what? That's what people want. They want the era, right? It's not just the game. They want 1981 or whatever. You want to get a glimpse of that era of Bosconian. I feel like, and for me, it's not just about the game too. I do like to get into that era. That's why I play games without doing modern stuff like save stating or rewinding or whatever. And it's not because there's any, exactly, because there's nothing wrong with that. If you do that stuff, there's 100% nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to gatekeep, but I don't do it because I want to play the game as originally intended as much as I possibly can.
Right, and that's the most important part, as much as you possibly can, because there are some exceptions that we make from time to time, like i.e. potentially the aforementioned Jiraka, right? But in general speaking, yeah, we come from the era of like expecting to replay some stuff, and that plays into the whole feeling of like learning the game or like whatever, right? But I would have never begrudged someone for like using modern amenities either. So yeah, it's just.
Of course.
What we're looking for.
Yeah. So if you could get the feel of that era the best you can, and I think that's what Atari 50 does for people.
One more question I've got is that I'm generally fine with these game selections across the 5 volumes, but would you have swapped out anything for another title? Or rather, do you feel like any other games, quote unquote, deserve spots across these 5, which potentially could be rude, but
I mean, swapping out is tough. Now, obviously, like, again, it's like I said when we were talking about the next generation review, if you will, of Volume 3. I don't feel like any of these don't deserve to be here.
yeah,
I feel like even ones I don't like Jiraga and Ishtar, I wouldn't say like we should just completely get rid of them. What I would say is I think we should add Namco Museum Encore had 7 games on it. They were Dragon Saber, Wonder Momo, Rompers, Motos, Sky Kid, King and Balloon, and Rolling Thunder.
Oof.
I mean, I think Rolling Thunder should have absolutely been on one of these. I think it's kind of criminal that they left that off. That's a classic.
Yeah.
Again, if that were on Volume 4, Rolling Thunder, that would have upped the value of that for me significantly.
Yeah.
Right? It's still kind of fine as it is because he has Assault and Ordyne and stuff. But like Dragon Saber, absolutely. Wonder Momo kind of sucks, but at least it's like interesting.
It's got vibes.
It's got vibes. It's got vibes. King and Balloon is like an oldie. I think it's like from like 80 or 81 or something like that.
I believe so, yes.
Sky Kid is great. I love Sky Kid. I don't know, man. I just feel so. Yeah, to answer your question, I don't think I would eliminate anything because, again, it's a museum. I feel like everything deserves to be seen, even if it's not that good. But yeah. I would have definitely beefed Volume 4 and Volume 5 to add at least one of these games each that ended up on Namco Museum Encore.
Yeah, that would have been great. I think that would have made like already fantastic like volumes pretty rounded out, but or even more rounded out, I guess. But yeah, I think their selections, the selections they made are solid as a whole. So it's like we don't really complain. We're not really going to really complain about these, but it's just it's interesting because Namco history is so extensive. As mentioned before, it's like encapsulating Namco history in just 5 volumes is kind of hard, man. It's kind of hard.
Is there anything that's not on Encore though that you could think of that like could have been? Again, Splatterhouse feels like out of question because of age rating stuff.
And yeah, the Liberal Rabble control wise might have been a little bit logistically challenging, but
I still think they could have done Liberal Rabble if they wanted to. I'm trying to think of anything. Maybe Thunder Scepter?
Yeah, well, man, that's so hard. Yeah, it's I mean, yeah, that would have been interesting.
It's kind of an asshole game, but I mean, like that could have gone on the Sicko. That could have been on like Volume 2 or something. I mean,
the secret unlockable Sicko title. But wait, who said that? But whatchamacallit? I guess the easy answer, just because it's on Namco Museum Switch, is perhaps Tank Force might have been an interesting inclusion in one of these. But
yeah. It seems like Battle City would have been more like if they wanted to do another tank game. I feel like Tank Force is like from the 90s, right? So
yeah, most of these are 80s. Yeah, so that's the thing. It is like after. So I don't know in terms of like time range what they would want to include, but yeah, it is true that it is after. Yeah,
but that's also why I might not say Rolling Thunder 2, which is like from 90 or 91. I mean, the original, sure. But I think that's the most egregious one, Rolling Thunder. I keep coming back to that in my head. It's just, come on, guys. Can't believe you skipped out on that. That sucks.
Yeah. Can you imagine the room, though? The monitor would like light up and stuff when you interact with it. God. Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah. Where that green guy comes on and goes, yeah. Or whatever. And like those like Nazi salute guys are just like, just sitting there like, oh, yes. Our master, this green alien.
Dude, that would have been a really fun interactable space, actually. But
oh man, imagine the arrange in there. Imagine that spy theme.
God. It's already so swank.
Yeah, they would have James Bonded the fuck out of that, right? They would have like
yeah, that'd been great. Alas.
Yeah, that sucks. Actually, that's a good experiment. What other, like, a Sky Kid room would be fun, right? Or like
Yeah, I would have loved to see that. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, it's tough.
A Motos room. You could push some fools off the edge.
You know what? I don't like Motos, but I definitely that would be a fun room. I will admit that. I do not miss the inclusion of Motos, that it was only on Encore. I'm not sad about that at all.
I do like Motos. I'm not sad about it, but at the same time, yeah, I wouldn't have minded the room.
Yeah, it would have been cool, I guess. Maybe if they wanted to get like into Midway's other creations, like Junior Pac-Man, maybe, or something.
Dude, I wonder if that would have worked out logistically, though. I mean, they did make Ms. Pac-Man work, so presumably they could make it work. I don't know the rights behind those other ones. It's like kind of probably
right. I don't think they've ever appeared again. I think the only one they ever claimed was Ms. Pac-Man.
Yeah,
that's it. Because I don't think the other ones they gave a shit about.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's probably mechanically the best one anyway, but yeah, I mean, oof.
Probably. Because there's like that Junior, there's like Pac-Man Plus or something.
Plus, that's right. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like all sorts of like variations that Midway were tinkering with, so.
It's so weird, huh? There's a lot of Pac-Man. Why not?
All right, well, I guess we should get to some rankings, huh? So I didn't really come into this having some strict rankings, so let's just talk it out here, and maybe we can figure it out, okay? So I do have some bullet points about things that I do think overall. So I'll say this. I think Volume 4 has the best presentation and game rooms and stuff, but the worst games. So that's like a big conundrum for me.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
Could you possibly say how you're going to weight this? Like, because obviously we don't want to just do the best games, because that's not really, we're taking the whole museum into account. So
yeah, you can't judge purely off the game list. So the presentation has to account, or the presentation has to impact the ranking to some degree, right? So I think like Volume 4 has got my favorite library, man. Like the cool sort of like glass windows with like looking out at like this nighttime sky and stuff. Like the character personality is amazing.
That is cool. Library. That is cool as hell. I don't think I had gone in that library until you told me about it. I was like, oh, what? I was like, oh shit. This is actually really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's my favorite library of the 5, so I mean, like, that has to factor in, right? That has to, but at the same time, it's just, then there's also Pac-Land and Return.
Yeah, the games aren't, like, the best, right? So it's like...
Yeah.
It's fun. Yeah, so like Volume 3 obviously has my favorite library. I spoke about it, the Vaporwave Dream, as I called it. But like as I said, I think the museum articles and stuff in there are the least interesting.
Yeah, it's such a conundrum. Unless you love Jiraga, which you clearly do.
I love Jiraga. It's my absolute favorite game of all time. But see, even like the Jiraga room is kind of cool. I will admit it, especially like the hallway where it's like the bricks and like it looks cool.
It's great.
I'll give it that. It's
fantastic. Yeah, it's got a sort of atmosphere to it, right? That seems pretty appropriate. But yeah, like it's so hard.
So I'll say this. Even though the first 2 volumes have the exact same aesthetic, I think I prefer Volume 1 because the games are more interesting, and therefore it leads to a more interesting museum, obviously, because of the game rooms. So, like, even if those game rooms are pretty, like, quaint compared to later entries, I do feel like they do have something to them, right? Like, am I making that up? I don't know. I feel like...
No, you're not. There's a personality to those spaces, and I mean, like, they are tricked out, like, considering, you know, the relatively straightforward sort of like layouts or whatever, right? So I mean, like, I think all of those are pretty memorable, especially so far as like, well, I mean, the pole positions and the new Rally X stuff really make you feel like you're in like a racetrack kind of space, and it really sets it up. So that's cool.
I love the shitty ass visibility in the Rally X room with the cars like racing by because they don't want to show too much, right? It's like they disappear into this like white mist or whatever. I get it; it has to be 60 frames a second. That was your target, but still,
the 60 frames per second fade out.
60 frames a second fog.
Oh my god, that's great.
Well, I will say this though, even though I didn't find the actual like museum articles that interesting, I see the appeal of Volume 3 a lot. I get why that was the most popular volume.
Yeah.
The cross section of games is so appealing. It has really good game rooms, and I do understand.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would personally rank that one that high, but I mean, like the new layout was fantastic, and like amenities like the faster loads for the museum content, that was nice
for sure.
Oh man, dude, it's tough because that also kind of factors into it, just like the way it like handles too. So it's just, whew.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
I feel like, well, Volume 5's got the layout and the games. So alongside the sort of walls that really set the tone for the whole thing. So I mean, like, I feel like aesthetically and by game selection, 5 is probably the best one. I think that's right.
Yeah. I mean, it would have to be, right? Because again, we're not trying to make it all about the games, but it's so up there.
Yeah.
You know, the games are so quality. Everyone is a winner. And like, I don't know. See, the only thing I would say, I don't even know if this is a bad thing. The museum in Volume 5 is so fucking wacky. It's like, is this really? It feels more like an entire art installation. Like the other ones actually feel like museums. This one is like, oh, eat the fruit to go into this room magically, or like the dragon head's gonna eat you or something.
Even though it is really off the wall, I mean, just the fact that like the space is like interestingly decorated, like with that spiral staircase in the vegetation, I feel like that kind of balances some of the wackiness of the game rooms out, but
it's, I don't know, man. Okay, I'll say this: 5 is the best one. Presentation, games, I think 5 is at the top no matter what. Okay, I'll just say that. Below that, I would probably put, man, 4 is so strong, but the games are not. Man, it's so tough.
It's personal disposition, like what you weigh more, I guess, to some degree, but we're trying to keep it kind of like balanced because it's not just about the games. It's not just about the museum. So it's like, I don't know.
I think I would have to say 3 is probably not. So I would say Volume 5, Volume 3, Volume 1, Volume 4, and then Volume 2 is probably what I would say.
I can agree with that. That's just because you can't put 4 at the bottom because, well, the
rooms are too good. The rooms are too good.
But on the flip side, like, you can't put 4 in the middle though because of the game lineup of 1. So yeah, I feel like yeah, I would agree with that. 5, then 3, then 1, then 4, then 2. Though
interesting.
Okay. I think also part of the reason for that though is because the games in 2 are kind of, as we often like to say, kind of sicko in nature. So it's kind of like
yeah, but I like them though. I like Robda. I like Gapless. You know.
Yeah.
It's just, oh my God, you're gonna work today, you know? Like,
tell me about it. Yeah,
no, but obviously, 2 being at the bottom doesn't mean it's about. Obviously, all of these have something to offer. But if I had to rank them,
yeah, and also like I think I'd have to put 3 up there just because of the way it handles, like in terms of like menu functionality and like flow. It's got that good balance of features and stuff like that, right? So I think that also adds to it too. And yeah, I just like navigating that space. You can't strafe, but you don't really need to, I guess, right?
No, you sure don't. Yeah, man. Yeah, so I think that's it. Yeah?
Yeah, that's I agree. We agree.
Okay, yeah. I'm surprised we came up with the same order. Volume 5, 3, 1, 4, then 2. That's interesting. I didn't really think we'd do that, but yeah.
That's just what we've come to. So we can back it up.
Yep. All right. I think we've said so much about Namco Museum, more than we ever thought we would. I think it's time for us to get the fuck out of here.
I'm gonna flap my wings and float away.
Oh, you still have the wings? I thought you were just a fairy. Oh shit, fairy. Shit, I forgot. Damn, you're right.
My name is Fairy Shit.
Fairy shit. I thought you lost your fairy shit after we left the Namco Museum, so I thought like that was just for traveling between them. So you have them forever.
Yes, the wispy pal wings will stick with me for the rest of until the next curmudgeon show. Whatever that is.
All right. Thanks for joining us. If you took this entire 3-episode journey with us, thanks a lot. Check the description of this podcast to find us on social media. Until next time, see you later.